Are you thinking of leaving corporate, but too afraid to make the move? Have you already escaped corporate, but are finding it hard to run your dream business? Are you wasting valuable time by attempting to figure challenges out on your own? We have created a podcast for corporate escapees running their own business. This is the Corporate Escapees Podcast by Build, Live, Give. We bring you first-hand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day as a corporate escapee. We get real with no corporate BS. And now, over to your host, Paul Higgins.
Welcome to Corporate Escapee Experts podcast, brought to you by Build, Live, Give. On this podcast, we get the world's best experts to help solve some of the most challenging obstacles our community faces with finding lifestyle and financial freedom. We have over 160 trusted experts in BLG Boost, and you can search by topic, and also you can ask me for an expert at any time. You can find out more at blgboost.com. But today I'm very excited to have a good friend and a very knowledgeable guy, Derek Gallimore from Outsource Accelerator, and his expertise is outsourcing, which is something that's really close and passionate. Well, that I am very close and passionate to. So I can't wait to hear more from Derek. So Derek, welcome to the show.
Hi, Paul. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, no, brilliant to have you on. So why don't we just start with how you became an expert in outsourcing?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, my personal journey and my story is that I've been in business over 20 years now. And in about 2011, I had a small but very quickly growing business in the UK, and it was in hospitality. And I quickly realized that we needed 24/7 customer service. And, it was sort of immediately realizable that just wasn't available and wasn't financially viable in the UK. So I was actually recommended that I look to outsource that service to the Philippines. That was in 2011. I started with one staff member, and within about 2 or 3 years, our business had grown, obviously, but I had about 70 staff then in the Philippines. It wasn't just customer service by that point. It was actually, they were doing operations, they were doing web management, web development, digital marketing. They were doing a lot of the HR. So we actually expanded just from the most basic customer service functions right up the kind of operational pyramid of the entire company. So that's where I started in 2011. Actually, in 2014, it was becoming such a critical aspect of my business that I moved over to the Philippines, or certainly based myself here for a lot of the time. From that time, so that I could concentrate more on this office here, because I just saw so much potential for it. Outsourcing is huge, and there is just such an opportunity in it, so that actually now I have Outsource Accelerator, which is basically helping other people in business get on board with outsourcing and start their outsourcing journey. Fantastic.
And did you say 70 staff was what you got to?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's incredible. I know that there's not many business owners that get to a business that size. So did you start with an agency, or did you start direct employing to you? How did you first start the ball rolling?
Yeah, and we started, as I would most definitely recommend, via an established outsourcing service provider, or a BPO as they're often called. And so they provide a very sheltered environment. They will help you recruit the staff member. They will also obviously oversee and supervise the staff member and provide all of the office housing and infrastructure and things like that. So yeah, we went with them. We actually when we got to about 15 to 20 people, we then looked to incorporate and get our own office. But really looking back, I think, we maybe should have held on until we had about 40 or 50 people for that move. But yeah, absolutely. Initially, we started within a BPO environment.
Great. And when you decided which provider to go with, what were some of the key decisions that you made at the time, or what were some of the key questions you asked the BPO providers at the time?
Yeah, well, this is one of the things. The market is quite opaque, and this is what Outsource Accelerator is really trying to attend to is provide people with more information and an easier on ramp into outsourcing. Back then, I mean, this is only 2011, but the market is pretty opaque. There's no centralized reviews. There's no centralized kind of information resource. So I really asked around, I asked my friends, I asked for recommendations, and then it was really just a case of picking up the phone and having a chat to people. Again, I was kind of flying blind because I hadn't really had a lot of experience in outsourcing. So it's all the kind of usual questions like how much does it cost and what are the tie-ins and what's the commitment here. But, in my personal experience, it left a lot of uncertainty in that you're kind of talking to, a company on the other side of the planet. They're kind of in a developing country, and you just don't really, there's a lot of sort of unknowns and a lot of blank spaces that need to be filled in. So, I went through the general process, and to be honest, I remember very clearly when I proceeded, I went with sort of one of the kind of better known mid-tier or certainly mid-sized BPOs. But I know that when I was signing on the contract, there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of kind of I felt a little bit of exposure because, you're just dealing with someone on the other side of the planet in a developing country. And so, but it did work out well, and since then I've got to know a lot more about the outsourcing industry. And, I'm personally in a position where I can more comfortably trust these organizations a lot more. But that's what I'm actually trying to do is provide those stepping stones to basically helping people along that journey.
Yeah, and I think it's a great service. I myself had a similar experience. It was back in 2012, went on a similar journey to you as I built my team, and it is, and certainly, landing in the Philippines and in particular Manila for the first time, it's it's so different to any other country I'd sort of been to. And look, it is a minefield, and that's why I do think a product like yours is well needed, and I've been amazed that it hasn't been created before you did. But what are some of the most common challenges you see people facing when they first get into outsourcing?
I have a vision that effectively everyone by 2030, 2040, every single SME will be outsourcing. I see no reason not to outsource. The benefits of outsourcing are just so huge. There's sort of abundant opportunities in outsourcing, and I just cannot believe that SMEs aren't at least, really spending a huge amount of time assessing this and seeing whether it's right for them or not. I think some of the pain points are exactly those that keep people away from doing it. There's just kind of lack of awareness. It's not really on their radar. But then there's also the unknowns and the uncertainty, as I mentioned before. I think there's also a bit of a hangover from the past in that outsourcing used to only be accessible to, the big multinationals like the Nike or the General Electric. And that certainly was the case. But now outsourcing is far more accessible to SMEs. It's being democratized, and there are services so that it is just, absolutely accessible in a turnkey fashion. And people can just almost literally start outsourcing tomorrow.
Yep. And what's fueled that growth? What's fueled that change that it is so much more accessible now?
The outsourcing, the sort of human resource outsourcing that we're talking about really started about 20, 25 years ago. Philippines was at the forefront of that. It really was only enabled when telephony became affordable enough, or international telephony became affordable enough, that they could put in the infrastructure to do phone calls. And with that, they would do customer support. Since then, we have obviously had the advent of the internet. We've had the capacity of the internet go up 100-fold or infinitely. So the roles and potential for outsourcing has expanded infinitely. Also, alongside that, 20 years ago, it was only available to these multinationals because they had to set up so much infrastructure, so much heavy capital infrastructure. Whereas now, like much of the web, like much of business, all of this has been kind of made cheaper. A lot of the technology is a lot cheaper, so that you can basically have turnkey outsourcing solutions. And as a result, there have been a lot more that have opened that are really catering to the smaller clients, the SMEs, and are more flexible in their approach. So previously, if someone like Coca-Cola or someone came over and wanted to outsource, they would probably be looking at 5,000 seats or 10,000 seats. They would build facilities. They would put in all the servers, massive infrastructure. Whereas now the SMEs can come in. They can say, look, I want to trial a full-time VA for 6 months, and they will say, yes, let's start tomorrow. So again, like much of business now, everything is just at your fingertips and so much more accessible.
Yeah, and I know we've talked quite a bit about the Philippines, but why did you choose the Philippines over any other market that is involved in outsourcing?
Yeah, good question. And part of our marketing and branding strategy about the Philippines is we're positioning it as the Swiss banking of outsourcing. Really, there are only two major players in outsourcing. It is India and the Philippines. Both of them have been going about 25 years. There's huge expertise in both regions. But to be honest, I think that there are different skill sets where the Philippines excels, and a lot of that is in terms of cultural alignment. It's in native speaking English, and also just their affinity to customer service and more of the kind of humanistic functions. So we really position the Philippines as kind of your safest bet for outsourcing. There are now dozens of developing countries or early entrants into outsourcing, and some of them might have different specialties. Like Eastern Europe is now very good for coding, but I would suggest that the Philippines is your one-stop shop for highly, highly reliable, high-quality outsourcing service provision.
Yeah, so if I'm a business owner listening to this and I'm thinking, look, what Derek is saying makes so much sense, and I've got to start this. What roles or what particular skills, or where do you think they should start their journey on outsourcing?
Yeah, good question. And I mean, a lot of this knowledge and what I'm going to say is quite transferable. And I know you kind of say similar things, but I would suggest, just get started. Just try anything, because actually just by engaging with someone remotely, by getting this started, you will see that actually a lot of those sort of barriers of fear, uncertainty, unknowns, they will be stripped away very, very quickly, and you will very quickly be starting to build your skill set in terms of running a remote staff member role or team. So I would initially suggest dip your toe in. How you go about that might differ to your needs. Having a VA is an absolute fantastic idea to get you started, and you can get all of the tasks that you shouldn't be doing, that you should be delegating over to this assistant or early stage operations person. There's also easy kind of stepping stones via a new role that you can add onto your function. So, most people need social media content management or their website being better managed and maintained. So you can kind of add in these extra roles that are maybe being overlooked because you're too busy at this stage. Also, accounting is a very easy stepping stone because you can get fantastic bookkeeping done here by a fully qualified CPA, highly qualified person for a fraction of the cost that you can get in your hometown. So there's a number of stepping stones, a number of options of getting involved. I would suggest starting and then just choosing one simple role that you can test this with.
Yeah, and what are some of the common myths that around outsourcing? You've been in the industry, and like you said, you got some brilliant first-hand experience since 2011. Yeah, what are some of the myths that you see or hear, and how can you dispel those?
Yeah, it's so we tend to have two camps of people that come outsourcing. Like initially, people are skeptical about the capacity and the potential for outsourcing. But then you also get people that hear about outsourcing, and like myself, I'm saying it's brilliant. It's it's the best business tool in the world. But actually, I just want to caution people: it is no magic bullet. It still takes a lot of work. Business is fundamentally complex, and when you add in the extra complexity of having a remote team and dealing with different cultures, different management styles, then it does add a level of complexity. Very commonly, we see inquiries, and you got to give it to them. People sort of want as much as they can get, but you very commonly get startup or SME inquiries saying, I want a VA that can also do my bookkeeping and accounting and also web management and also write content pieces, twice a week. And I think it's often, and people then want to pay about $200 a week for that.
Yes.
And I think you've just got to step back and say, look, is that available in your hometown? And I think you'd be very hard pressed to find such a broadly capable person. And I think people just need a reality check that, the opportunities in outsourcing are so vast, but you just need to realize that it's still business. Business is fundamentally complicated. It will take a long time to iron out the tweaks, but the rewards are really there, if you start the journey and persist with it.
Yeah, and you talk about some of the cultural differences. What are some of the cultural differences that you see versus some of the the Western countries where the owner sits?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something I try and tell people as well is because often we get very successful business owners, entrepreneurs. They might be driving around in a Lamborghini and have $100 million company, and they think they kind of get it all, they know it all, and then they come over here. And actually, it requires a bit of relearning, a bit of re-education, because you've got to kind of look at things a little bit differently. And people sort of underestimate the actual journey they will need to go on to kind of almost learn the new language of business in the outsourcing setting. So, we encourage people just to come in with an open mind. Very commonly, people, as I said, they can have a very sophisticated business in the West, but then they realize that when they come to the Philippines, it might need to go up even a notch further in terms of sophistication. The Philippines is very sort of partial to having everything structured. They need KPIs, they need process maps, they want everything kind of measured and monitored. And really, I think we see a lot of business people that are quite surprised. They come over here, they think it's a developing nation, and they're going to show people how it works, and then they're kind of taken aback by the incredible expertise and maturity in processes that the Philippines has. Other sort of very common aspects that people find different, there is a cultural difference here. You have to manage people differently. They have different communication styles. There is different sense of community here. They work differently together. Now, this isn't better or worse. It is just different. And it's about almost translating the languages of connecting with people, which just takes a little bit of getting used to,
So you talk about different styles. Give some examples of what you mean by that. What is different? And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's enormously difficult to generalize. But the Filipinos generally, they're very sentient kind of people. They're very they're highly communicative. They're very sort of relationship based, and then so they're very communication driven, and so the way that you necessarily have to run a team in the Philippines is different to Australia. There are also cultural aspects in terms of, potentially jumping around jobs a little bit more. Absenteeism is a little bit higher, and they also have maybe living conditions, which means that they have to commute into work for 2 or 3 hours each way. So there's a lot of different aspects that in themselves aren't that significant, but then cumulatively, when you maybe are trying to run a team or try and get the same productivity out of people, it's different, and that takes a little bit of experience to navigate.
Yeah, look, I know I certainly, coming from a boardroom at Coca-Cola and then going over and having my first workshop and asking my team to contribute, this is the plan, please give me your feedback. And there was just, silence. And it took me a while to realize that it's probably best to have one key spokesperson. They go and talk in Tagalog, their native language, and talk about it in a comfortable environment. And then that spokesperson came back and actually presented the group thoughts to me, which worked really well. But it took me a while to change my style because, in a lot of cases, it's still quite hierarchical over there that, you don't challenge the boss, so to speak. And I don't know about you, but it certainly seems like, it's nearly like turning back the clock a little from what we're probably used to, certainly here in Australia, where we're used to just speaking your mind.
Yeah.
It's not the case over there. Do you come across that, Derek?
Absolutely. It's a super, super traditional society, and that is top to bottom and across every kind of aspect of their life, and we often see a lot of kind of Western bosses come here and say, don't call me sir, call me by my name, and we're going to have ping pong tables and sofas, and, we're going to make this like Google, and it can work, but typically it doesn't work because you cannot change the internal culture of someone overnight. This is so deeply ingrained. Their family structures are all very hierarchical. They can be quite matriarchal, hugely respect in terms of elders, but also seniors. And there are like a lot of, also in school, they're taught to really, I suppose, just follow orders as opposed to question, as opposed to critical thinking. Now, all of these things, it kind of just is, and this is many generations deep. So you need to bear these in mind. You're not going to come in as an open-minded boss and kind of change this overnight because they're just not going to be comfortable. They're not going to really perform as well as if they were in, within their more known structures. Now, it is important to get them to come out of their shell, to have them contribute, to have them think critically, and you can guide them along this journey, but it's most definitely not going to happen overnight. And also, if you take on your first employee and expect them to fall in line with a kind of Western figure it out as you go along and use your initiative sort of approach, then that is where there's often a lot of malalignment and kind of sort of not so good results.
Yeah, no, true. And, you deal with so many business owners in making decisions on which outsourcing provider they should go with. What are some of the common objections you see from business owners when they're looking at outsourcing?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the obvious one is we actually do a lot of advertising out into the world, digital media and trying to raise awareness of outsourcing. And we actually have people returning comments saying that we are traitors and, we are terrorists. So outsourcing can be quite emotive. I say that most understated as possible. There is ethical concerns for outsourcing, and I am trying to do my best to absolutely dispel beyond doubt any of those ethical concerns. We have actually done a white paper regarding this, talking about the win-win of outsourcing. It really is a huge advantage for you, the SME, the business owner out there in the West. And not only is it an advantage for you, it is an advantage for your organization and your community around you. And the reason for that is because, outsourcing isn't about taking jobs. It's not about saving money. It's actually about having the opportunity and resources to expand your business exponentially. And it's about having access to these resources so that your team in your country can concentrate on the high value activities, and so that you can concentrate and look into new markets, look to build new products. Whereas previously you were probably hamstrung by your P&L, because if you want to try a new idea, you've got to take someone on for $100,000 a year. Even your bookkeeper is costing you too much. And so societies can actually kind of hamstring themselves by the cost overhead and the lumpiness of the costs. The other aspect to that is that people might have concerns over the ethicality of hiring people on what they consider to be a low wage in these developing countries. And again, I try my hardest to try and dispel this myth, because really outsourcing is an incredible opportunity for these developing countries. It's building a middle class, it's building white collar professional roles, and it's building a career ladder for these people, and they're just absolutely responding well and building their nation as a result of it. So I see that as one of the most common objections, and I am just trying to do my best to get people just to really assess it without the bias going into it, and they'll see that it really is a win-win for everyone involved.
Yeah, and I think if you've spent a lot of time in the Philippines like you and I have, you realise that family is so essential. And a lot of the options in the past was they had to go and work in foreign countries to earn a living, to pay, because a lot of the elders, like you said, it's a society that looks after their elders. And, the elders rely on the younger people to earn the money to do that. So they get educated, the younger ones, they get opportunities to do that, but then often they have to work offshore. Whereas I think a lot of the roles that, BPOs are providing, it's actually being able to work either from home or work close to home so that they can actually be with their family, which I think is a massive benefit. And I think that sometimes just doesn't get seen as much as, well, hang on, you're disadvantaging people because they're getting paid such a low rate. And as you know, it's all relative. That a career, certainly a virtual assistant, a career in the Philippines is an aspirational role, and it actually is something that they really love to do. Whereas a lot of younger people in other countries, that may not be as aspirational. What are your thoughts on?
Yeah, absolutely. To throw a few figures out there, like a fully qualified nurse working in a general hospital here might earn about $200 a month, whereas an entry level outsourcing professional, whether that's a VA or something, could be earning about $600 a month. So they're already tripling their base pay, but also there's the opportunity. They're in white collar jobs working in outsourcing. But where I see the real exciting opportunity for all of this, for everyone in the world, is that outsourcing is really about getting everyone into one world marketplace, and that creates a true meritocracy. And previously there's been the birth lottery. Like if you're born white in the West, then you pretty much nailed it. And if you're born in a developing country, then you're really going to have a hard time. And I think the new online marketplace and outsourcing as a catalyst for that means that the world is becoming a true meritocracy now. And that means that if there's a guy sitting in the province of the Philippines, he's probably already got a pretty good grasp of English. He can educate himself online now. There's so many free courses or cheap courses. He can build his own toolkit, and then he can go out there and get jobs and compete with people that are sitting on Wall Street now. And there really is a true meritocracy in that people now pay for a deliverable, for an output and a result, as opposed to where you're sitting And so I'm really excited about the future potential, because I think that it's going to be more about what are the deliverables and what are the cost of those deliverables, and people will be assessed on that merit, as opposed to, where are you sitting, what high school did you go to, and I see that as such a major benefit for everyone. Again, I don't want to focus too much on the Philippines, because people are worried that they don't want to support the Philippines and destroy their own home country. So I'm saying that it gives people in Wall Street the opportunity to get incredible jobs done without having to pay Wall Street rates. So it's absolutely a super exciting win-win.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of success cases and helped a lot of businesses. But on the flip side, you've probably seen some people where they've tried to do it themselves and not tap into services like yours. And what are some of the downsides of trying to do it all yourself rather than tapping into experts like yourself?
Yeah, so I call outsourcing a journey, and just like business is a journey, like day one is day one, but you've got to learn so much more as you go through the undulations of your business, like different growth phases, different scale, and outsourcing is no different to that. When you start outsourcing, it really is, a lifetime of learning, and it's an ongoing partnership. One thing I try and educate people about is the difference between Upwork, Freelancer, all these kind of freelancer websites. They're popping up everywhere, but unfortunately there's a lot of kind of quality control issues, and people might try those, have a bad experience, and then kind of dismiss outsourcing as not working because the quality isn't there. And so what I try and stress is that outsourcing compared to Upwork or Freelancer is the difference between night and day. It's kind of the difference between, in your hometown, getting a uni kid down at your local pub to get a bit of work done for you versus going to a professional services firm and having, the work done properly. And so outsourcing offers a structured environment. It offers the full infrastructure, offers supervised oversight. Not only that, though, when you get work done via an outsourcing services firm, you're basically tapping in to their 25 years corporate experience in getting this stuff done. So, that is where the difference is between kind of a bit of odd job outsourcing, or odd job kind of freelance work, and proper structured outsourcing.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point, and also I think it's what business are you in, and I think for most people, if you want to go down the journey of learning it all this yourself, you can, like Derek and I have, but that takes a lot of time, and time's normally your most precious resource, and it could take you from doing other activities like sales and delivery, which are the things that only you can do. So it's always an opportunity cost. But if I take back what I did in 2012 and, all the flights that I took to Manila and all the conversations and all the roads that I went down that were dead ends, if a service like this had been around back then, I would have absolutely jumped at it rather than trying to learn it all firsthand myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they call it the idiot tax, don't they? Anything
Yes.
you do is takes you time to learn, and you're obviously going to make a few mistakes, and that's why I think that you should have generally mentors and coaches and guidance and masterminds, and join all these things so that you kind of cut down on the failure to success ratio, and you're making more of the better decisions earlier and quickly. So yeah, I mean that and that's why we're here. We're effectively trying to make that journey easier. We're trying to provide easier on-ramps and stepping stones for people into outsourcing. And we are doing this all independently. So we aren't an outsourcer. We aren't providing outsourcing services. We just really want to be the TripAdvisor or the Booking.com of outsourcing, basically making it easier for you to engage and start their outsourcing journey.
Great. And what is the vision for you in the business, Derek?
Well, I mean, one of my gripes with outsourcing is that it's still a very long sales cycle, and it's complicated because it's almost like getting married. There's no real definite end, and there's no real definite kind of agreement of what's being done. It's more an organic kind of process, and I find that puts a lot of people off. So we are trying to create more of a transactional platform where it enables people to more safely, comfortably, easily get involved in outsourcing. So we have productized outsourcing services. We effectively have a superstore of outsourcing services where people can effectively select products and dip their toe into outsourcing, have those products executed by some of the best outsourcing service suppliers in the industry, and then through having that product delivered for a very defined set price, set period, then they can effectively see whether it works for them and then assess whether they want to roll that over into an ongoing relationship. So we're all about providing easier stepping stones into outsourcing and also any guidance along with that. We also offer 3 free quotes. If people just want to reach out to outsourcers, they can put in some details and we will connect them to 3 of the most suitable outsourcing service suppliers. So again, it's just creating that interface to make outsourcing easier for everyone.
Great. And a lot of people talk about, outsourcing will decline as artificial intelligence takes over. And I know there's, a lot of debate around that at the moment. What's your view on that transition? Will it be a transition? How long, etc.? It's a bit like driverless cars, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've had kind of AI in some form for a long time. Those banking IVRs, like when you phone the bank and they say, do you want, which options do you want? AI is really just an extension for that. And it's going to be a long time before it's very functional. I think there is absolute risk by AI, robotics, automation, absolutely. And the industry here is concerned about that. But the industry has moved on a lot since the early days when it was really just customer service, when it was really just the basic functions. Now, outsourcing is basically every function of your business that can be done in front of a computer screen, which, as you know, is almost 95% of business functions these days. The Philippines covers all of those bases, and it's going to be a long time before AI automation really threatens the full breadth of all of those roles. Also, I'd like to kind of add that outsourcing really is just employment. So I believe it's under threat, but I believe that there's almost a very close correlation between employment across the world being threatened with outsourcing functions being threatened as well. So, we're soon going to see driverless cars take 3-4 million jobs from the US, from all of the drivers. And so it is going to affect employment generally, but there's going to be a very close correlation in terms of how it affects outsourcing and employment across the world.
Great. And obviously, you're at the heart of outsourcing, living in Manila in the Philippines, but how do you stay abreast of the changes in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, the industry it's about a $30-40 billion industry, and across the world, it's about a $200 billion industry. It's very disparate in that the top end of the industry is, as I mentioned, dealing with the big boys that might have 40,000 staff here sitting in Manila servicing, General Electric or one of those big boys. There is a huge amount of complexity there, and it's that enterprise level is very different. I keep my ear to the ground in terms of more the SME market. The SME, I mean, kind of, sort of up to maybe $100 million revenues per year, and really that is it's kind of more real business, and really it's there's a lot of events, there's a lot of functions. I attend all of these. I am part of BPO roundtables. I'm a part of the industry boards here. So, it's really just staying close to the heart of it. And a little bit like being in Switzerland, outsourcing is one of the major industries of the Philippines. So it's actually difficult not to be involved in it when you're sitting here in Manila.
Yeah, excellent. And I know you mentioned a couple of great resources, and we'll put those links in the show notes. So people can go to buildlivegive.com/podcast, and they can search for Derek's name, and he will have 3 great resources. One is the quote that he spoke about. The other is around the superstore, and then we'll have the link to his homepage where he's got a fantastic outsourcing toolkit. And like I said, I've been heavily invested in this industry since 2012. And when I went through Derek's training, I was really impressed by how professional it was and also how practical it was. So, each time I looked at it, I thought, yes, that's what I did learn the hard way. And the information that Derek provides is fantastic. And I just haven't seen any other service in the world that makes it easy for you to step into outsourcing. And as Derek said before, there's very little downside. I don't know, Derek, I'll ask you, but have you had anybody that's started outsourcing and then have decided not to continue it?
Yeah, look, it's a roller coaster ride. As I say, you would know yourself, there's a lot of businesses themselves that don't survive. Business itself is fundamentally difficult. And when you're figuring out operations, outsourcing isn't a magic bullet. So yeah, there's absolutely failures. People can get disappointed, but also, you've got to realize with outsourcing, it's like if you have a bad cup of coffee, you don't give up drinking coffee. You just kind of put it down to that's a bad coffee shop. And you can get that with outsourcing, but equally you can get that with, contractors in your hometown or accountants in your hometown. So, again, it's about navigating this as effectively as you can, avoiding some of the common hurdles and pitfalls, and kind of getting your own insight, awareness, and experience of outsourcing up to speed as quick as you can so that you're doing this as efficiently as you can. But without doubt, once you get this humming, the opportunities are just incredible. And you very rarely see people, once they have properly launched their outsourcing, ever going back to the way they used to do it. It really is, the most profound business tool out there. And, just to your point, I'm not selling anything, but I basically suggest that there is no business or no business owner out there that can't afford not to look into outsourcing. I'm not saying you have to do it, but this is something that you really, really need to assess and see whether it's right for you or wrong for you. You just cannot ignore this business opportunity.
Brilliant. Well, look, it was great having you on the show, Derek. Like I said, you've got an enormous amount of practical knowledge, to build a team up of 70 with, a really successful business, and then to turn this into your business because you see the upside, and provide a marketplace that doesn't exist, I think is wonderful. So thanks a lot for being on the show today. It was really great having you on.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. It's been a pleasure.
Excellent. So, so thank you for listening to Derek Gallimore from Outsource Accelerator. And if you'd like to get access to other great guests like Derek, we've actually got over 160 vetted suppliers for corporate escapees. You can go to blgboost.com. Also, I'd love to hear your questions or any other further thoughts that you've got, and I'll pass them on to Derek. So you can email me at paul@buildlivegive.com. And if you think that this would help other people, please share it. Anyone that you know is thinking about outsourcing, has talked to you recently about outsourcing, I'd love you to share this great podcast with them so it can help them on a journey which Derek and a lot of his clients, and I know all of our members of BLG love the benefits of outsourcing. So thanks again, Derek, and I'll talk soon.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you for listening to the Corporate Escapees podcast, brought to you by the team at Build, Live, Give. If you found this podcast helpful, please share it with other corporate escapees. If you would like to join a community of like-minded peers, please visit www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening and be brave.